Hi everyone, and welcome back to a new video. So for this one, I'm going to talk about Unravel Me, which is the second book in Share Me series. Even though there were obviously a lot happening in this book, it is feel a bit slow at the beginning, mostly because at the end of Share Me, Juliet seemed to be ready to start building something here, but during the beginning of this book, to maybe even halfway in, it felt a lot like she had backstepped. When Unravel Me begins, 2 weeks have passed, and Juliet is struggling to learn how to control her powers, and honestly 2 weeks is probably not a reasonable time to all of a sudden learn how to fully control her power, but what I feel like she had an annoying backpedaling is when she still doesn't seem to even want to try to really make a home for herself there with the other people. And yes, it's not entirely on her. At the beginning, it does seem like some of the others don't really want to be around her either, because I guess her reputation precedes her and they're afraid. But as it goes on, it seems more like it had to a certain extent been on her. So not much happened during the first few chapters. Adam had been acting all weird and trying to go out of his way to avoid Juliet and refusing to tell her how he and Castiel's training was going. And also refusing to tell her what they were doing. To be honest, he mostly just ran away time she showed up, like she fucking had COVID or something. At the same time, because of how much Juliet has been struggling to control her powers, Castiel has changed to help her out. Now, fast forward to chapter 6, where things are really starting to happen. Being tired of Adam constantly being in a weird mood and not telling her what's happening, she keeps going on and demanding to see Adam and hear Castiel were training. Again, you finally decide to bring her to where they are doing tests on him, and they're saying that the tests they are doing basically looks like torture. She gets overwhelmed with her emotions, with both anger and also guilt, because she thinks it's her fault Adam's even here in the first place, which isn't true. He's the one that wanted them to run away. He made his own decisions that led them to this point, and honestly, if anything, he's more at fault than she is. Anyways, she ends up cracking the ground, and she pretty much causes an quake in there that almost kills everyone. She ends up passing out and wakes up a few days later, feeling horrible about what happened, and while Sarah and Sonia tending to her, she is basically apologizing and asking about Adam, which is when Kenji clears his throat announcing his presence and asks to talk to her alone. And while she's trying to apologize to him, he asks her if she really is sorry, which seems really fair, being that even now she was asking about Adam and basically just cared about seeing him right after she almost killed everyone there. Then he also gives her a reality check about how she's not even trying. When he's done calling her out, he's offered to help her out just because it seems like no one else is really trying with her either, and that he thinks she's a nice girl who's just being misunderstood. He also ends the talk by giving her an ultimatum that she and Adam need to deal their shit, because they can't be dealing with that while they're in the middle of a war. And this was one of my favorite scenes in this book, because honestly, someone really needed to give her a reality check, because the way she had been acting so far was understandable, but it most definitely wouldn't cut it, being what they were dealing with. And I just love the way he laid it out to her. And it seems like all the sense that everyone has been trying to put into her has finally paid off. And so then she actually starts to try and make some friends there, starting with her roommate, Clarence, who she feels a bit ashamed about not knowing anything about them. Like why everyone there calls them the girls, while they're obviously far from the only girls there, which is something she normally should have known by then. When she gets back to her room, Castiel and Adam are there talking to her about Adam's powers, which are they can disable things, like other people's powers, and that is why he has been able to touch her. His ability seems to kick in unconsciously when he feels like he's in grave danger, but Castiel goes on to explain that because of all the time they have been spending together, he's more at ease and his body's in less of a defense, and being that he can't control his powers, he can't defend himself against hers, and her touch is starting to affect him more and more, and he's slowly going to die because of this. And so they're gonna have to start keeping a distance from each other. But guess what, for some reason got an issue understanding that. Adam, who then keeps going on about how they can still be together and find a way to make it work. Like, why doesn't this guy understand that he's gonna die? And also leave her with the guilt and trauma of having killed someone she loved. Like, well, by the end of the conversation, he ends up kissing her, and Juliet, not ready to really end their relationship, doesn't push him away. And like 2 seconds in, and he collapsed in pain and passes out. Now really starting to find a place for herself at the base, at the same time as she's trying to get over Ad, and that she once again hurt him, and how it apparently seems to be a pattern with her. She starts her first day with Kenji helping her. Kenji takes her to a classroom where the group of people who go out on the missions for like getting supplies and stuff are. There she also meets 2 new friends, Brandon and Winston, both of whom she had already met, but now they are really talking and well becoming friends. While they're talking, Winston tells them that the patrols have been crazy because the soldiers are out there every night looking for them, including Warner, who's out there looking with them, which kinda puts an anxious fear into Juliet, knowing that he's out there looking for her. Later, when they're outside, Juliet sees Warner on patrol. She sees him taking a dog behind the fence where no one can see them, When she's alone, she follows them, thinking that he's probably going to torture or kill the dog, but he's actually smiling and feeding it, which obviously shocks her. And right the second Warner sees her, Kenji shows up and basically turns them both invisible. This is exactly the scene from Destroy Me, where Warner has seen Juliet, yet thought he might have imagined her when she all of a sudden disappeared. Turns out, Kenji had just turned them invisible. After Kenji takes her away, they have another talk, where Kenji once again, a bit more in her face this time, give her another reality check, which was well deserved because she pretty much risked all of them by going off like that and letting Warner see her, risking them all getting caught. When she and Kenji catch up with the rest of the group, and while getting the supplies, she gets talking to some of the others there, like Ian, who ends up inviting her to sit with them later when they get back. So, lo and behold, more friends are being made. Later when they get back and she's sitting with her new friends for lunch, before she even has a chance to start eating, Adam shows up wanting to talk to her and was basically begging her to stay with him. But Juliet, having had enough common sense talking to her, sticks to her decision to not get back together. Like, does this guy seriously not understand that he's gonna die? Later when Kenji finds her, she is trying to learn how to control her powers, which isn't really going too well, but Kenji ends up helping her out, which works out pretty well. The next day while she's sitting with Kenji, Brandon wins for breakfast, and when she asks Winston about how the patrols are going, that is going weirder, because apparently there are no soldiers out looking, which is pretty sus that they all just stopped looking. Next, Juliet is all of a sudden awake in a hurry and ends up in Castiel's office together with Kenji and Adam. And there they learn that Warner's father is in Sector 45 and has been for some time now. He also tells them that he has taken 4 of the people hostage and that now he wants to meet Juliet for a chat. He also tells them that the 4 hostages are Winston, Brandon, Ian and Emory, who are all Juliet's new friends. And while Kenji and Adam are fans of the plan, that the 3 of them go there pretty much alone, Juliet still agrees to it and she is determined to go, which is what they end up doing. When Juliet meets up with Warner's dad at the address he picked, which is a pretty cute little house, he ends up telling her that this was simply a trap to get all of them out so he could easily kill them all. But another reason he wanted to see her was because apparently Warner had pretty much begged him not to kill her, which both disappointed him because he had raised Warner to never beg anyone for anything, and also intrigued him to meet her, being that her life what he had begged his father for the first time in his life. He then calls Warner into the room and proceeds to ask how she had managed to escape, to which she asks him if he wants to know about the first or second time. And him being the sick weirdo that he is, kinda enjoys that answer because I guess now he feels like Warner had failed twice, which also means that he can now punish him twice as well. But after some more chit-chat, but we also get to learn that his name is Anderson and that Warner had taken his mother's last name, something else that he looks down on him for, because God forbid a guy loves his mother. Which makes you wonder who hurt this guy, everyone and everything, that much. Well, after that, he hands Warner a gun and tells him to shoot her, though Warner ends up turning around and pointing the gun at him instead. Here, when he tells him to point the gun in the right direction, as if he thinks Warner accidentally turned around and pointed it at him by accident, but most importantly, he also calls Warner Aaron, which is get to learn his first name. So while everyone is pointing a gun at each other, Warner at his father Juliet, we also learn that Warner, ever since he was a child, had tried to kill his father more times than he's cared to count, including one time when he had woken up with Warner standing over him. Then he basically goes on belittling him and forgetting all about her entirely. He puts his gun on Warner's head instead, and Juliet ends up taking this opportunity and grabs his throat, and while she's choking him to death, she also tells him to drop his gun, which he obeys. She then also shoots him in both legs, and she really seems to enjoy the pain she's inflicted in him. And having now seen in glimpses into what kind of person he is, which leads her to having more compassion for Warner. But right when she's about to finish him off, there's an explosion, and Kenji all of a sudden up and dragging her back. He also tells her that they can't kill him yet. He tells her that he and Adam managed to find Ian and Emory, but they don't know where Winston and Brendan are. Kenji had already knocked Warner unconscious, and they decide to take him with them as a hostage. He also tells her that there's a whole fight that's broken out outside, because even though Warner never made the call to attack, and Castiel apparently had decided to do it. But the most shocking part of the whole book is when Adam gets there and sees Anderson on the floor and recognizes him as his abusive, which means that him and Warner are also half brothers. Fast forward to when everyone is back at the base, and even though they managed to save Ian and Emory, they are both badly hurt. And as for Warner, he had made it clear that he will only talk to Juliet, and Cassie, thinking that he can't touch and that she'll be safe, basically puts her in charge of him. When she gets to his room, the guards tell her that they had every furniture because he had been acting all crazy ever since he had woken up. starting to threaten them and destroy everything. And when they apparently had only calmed down when they told him that she was on her way. When she walks in, he's sitting there holding her notebook and revealing that he has memorized the whole thing. When he starts reading it, after a few lines, he closes his eyes and starts recollecting the rest from memory. He then also apologizes for having kissed her, and then having gotten past the embarrassment she felt that he had read and memorized her journal, notices that his arm is healed. While they're just talking for some time, he asks her how long he has before they kill him, and when she tells him that he's a host and that they're not going to kill him, he then tells her that's a waste of all of the time because his father has probably not even realized that he's gone, and that keeping him there isn't going to help them. While James is joining them during training and asks Kenji if he thinks it's possible that he could have some powers as well, and he tells him that it might be. And hearing that, he quickly gets excited and hurts himself, but when Kenji and Juliet try to tend to him, he tells them that it's fine because he always heals naturally fast, and they realize that apparently James's power is super healing. Later on, Castell shows up and wants to talk to Juliet, and when she asks him what it is he wants to talk about, he tells her that Warner told him he could touch her, and that she's also well aware of this. Now they also start to piece together the fact that Warner must have powers as well, because he can touch her and that he's Adam's brother. So this must have something to do with their blood, and so she realizes that Warner must be one of them. But if that is true, which it is, that means that their powers come from Anderson's bloodline, which kind of makes me wonder why does he seem to hate those with powers if it's in his own blood as well. Now whether he himself has one or not, well, the guy is weird, so who knows. And Castell, despite not knowing Warner and Adam's kinship, still pieces it together that if he can touch her, it must be because he's one of them, and is immediately excited about starting to do tests on him and finding out exactly what his powers are. And he also now wants Warner to stay there as a member of the group instead of a hostage. Later, when she goes back to Warner and they start talking, she ends up admitting that she doesn't hate him, and they both admit that they would like to be friends. Later again, they get talking, and after a while, Warner, without her having to ask, tells her that his father is planning a massacre, and that during the attack is the only chance they have to save Winston and Brendan, who are being held at the HQ. Later, when she tells the others what Warner had told her, and when they're done coming up with a plan, Juliet is once again urgently sent to talk to Warner when a guard shows up, and tells him that he's freaking out again, and is practically breaking down the door. When she starts talking to him, he tells her that Cass has offered for him to stay there, as one of them and not as a hostage, that it's not too late to change, which Warner doesn't believe in at all. He tells her that he can sense others' feelings, and basically how they feel about him, which seems to be part of his powers. He also tells her that he's gonna leave the first chance he gets. But despite having told her that he doesn't want to stay, and that he's planning to leave, he still goes to Castell and tells him that he has decided to take him up on his offer and stay there as one of them, which Castell later announces to everyone in the dining hall, as well as telling them that Warner is indeed one of them. And when Adam loudly asks how he can be sure that he's not lying, he tells them that they know because he can touch Juliet. And after that, Adam being hurt leaves, and Juliet goes after him trying to calm him down. But in the midst of it, Warner shows up there, and when he and Adam kind of get in a fight, and Kenji comes out as well to break them off. But when Adam isn't listening, and they all kind of end up in the middle of it, with Adam going to attack Warner, and Juliet having her hand on him trying to calm him down, putting a distance between them, and Kenji in the middle pushing them both back, all of a sudden ends up in an unbearable pain and ends up passing out. When everyone is taking Kenji away to the medical center, Warner and Juliet are the only ones left, and while he's comforting her, he also ends up revealing that it was him who unintentionally hurt Kenji and not her. He reveals that he can sense energy and what people are feeling, but that with this accident, he also learned that he can also take them for himself, like how when all of them were in contact, Juliet was still touching him when Kenji grabbed his arm, and her power basically went through him and got to Kenji. And when she takes his offered hand to try out and see how he reacts, he also absorbs her super strength and manages to make a hole in the ground with his free hand. And when they are talking and she tells him that he needs to tell Castell about what his powers really are, he tells her that he's not going to fight with them and that he's going to leave. He also starts saying that he needs to ask her something, but before he can finish they hear Adam coming. She and Adam basically talk about nothing, though she does immediately ask him about Kenji, and he tells her that he's gonna be fine. She also asks if he's gonna tell Warner that they're brothers, which Adam says that blood doesn't make them brothers, and that he's not gonna tell him. Later, when it's just her, Castell, Ada, a sleeping James, and the girls left with Kenji, Castell starts telling them how he found Kenji when he was a child, and that he's kind of been like a son to him. And before leaving, Juliet again thinks to herself how little she knows about all of them, and she really wants to change that. When she gets back to her room, Warner soon shows up to her door to talk to her. He wants to ask her to go with him, to which she says no. They also later get in a fight and Warner ends up leaving, which is when it sinks into her that she will probably not see him again. So fast forward to the next morning, everyone has already realized that Warner's left and they are all angry and ready to spill some blood. Then later when they're about to leave, Kenji shows up ready to join the fight as well, and Juliet is overexcited to see that he's okay. After, Anderson's soldiers have already started a massacre, and in the process of saving them, Juliet ends up getting kidnapped. They take her to Anderson at the house they had met, and there she basically ends up sleeping until morning. In the morning, when she wakes up, Anderson starts telling her about the house. That is where Warner's sick mother lives, and that is also why he so badly wants to be in charge of Sector 45, to be near her. And yes, he looks down on Warner for that too. Soon, Warner arrives, and is well obvious shocked at seeing Juliet there, and also seems to be pretty pissed off at the sight of her brute. Then Anderson also reveals that he's planning on using the guards to heal his legs, and after making sure that Warner is paying good attention, shoots Juliet in the chest. Somehow still not having died, she wakes up, I guess not long after, and not really being able to move. We can hear Warner argue with Sarah and Sonia, them saying that they can't help her because she's basically dead and they can't touch her. And he's trying to reason with them that they only need to touch him and he can transfer the power. And when they realize that she's awake and see how desperate and frantic Warner really is, they apparently decide to trust him and they grab his arm to start healing her. The next morning, she wakes up in Warner's bed with him sleeping next to her, but he quickly wakes up, and when he asks her how she's feeling, all she thinks about is how she now is more than ready to not only get her friends back, but now she wants revenge. And as for the guys, they manage to regroup with the others at James's old home, and there Kenji is naturally worried about Juliet and wants to go after her, while Adam have no interest in going after her and doesn't want to risk going after someone who doesn't even want to be with him. In order to save his life, like there's absolutely something very wrong with him, and the guy for real has no understanding of friendship or loyalty. Well, I'm not really sure how to end this yet, so